One woman endured years of terror before she was kidnapped and held in a bunker inspired by Netflix's TV show, You. She knew her abductor as they had been stalking her for over a decade and had made this plan specifically for her. While she had asked the courts for protection from this stalker, this was denied, and the judge who denied this would later have to convict the man who had kidnapped her and held her hostage. The same man he allowed to do this. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I am Brooke Makenna. I am so grateful that you are here. We in this community love to talk about the victims and the survivors over the perpetrators and the monsters, and it's really important to us that that is our main focus here. And Samantha Stites has actually spoken about how that's how she wants her story to be told, and so I'm so happy to have found it and to be telling it to you today. But that is all due to the fact that Samantha herself has spoken out and wants her story to help others. There is a documentary called Stalking Samantha on Hulu right now that I will have linked down below that is very insightful. It is terrifying, it is devastating, and it is pretty much every woman's worst nightmare. If you would like to join the Genuine Gem community, then you can subscribe down below, and you can also join our Genuine Gem newsletter, which is just signing up with your email, and it makes it so that I can personally send you my videos when YouTube sometimes forgets to. I will also have a playlist of survivor stories down below. I think that they are the most incredible humans on this planet, and we can learn so much from them. But first, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Solitaire Grand Harvest, for allowing me to continue sharing these stories. Now, Solitaire Grand Harvest isn't just a classic solitaire game. It has actually reinvented the way that you play. It merges solitaire with the world of farming. You're guided by Sam the dog, and you get to earn crops to grow your farm, as well as help the cutest animals go on side missions, all as you play. For me, the game is when I want to relax and I don't want to doom scroll through social media. It's basically an upbeat game that provides a source of comfort to play and ignore the chaoticness of the world. So that's why I love it, and I'm not the only one, because it is the #1 solitaire game in the world. It's completely free to play and 100% ad-free. So you can download Solitaire Grand Harvest for free now using the link in my description or the QR code on the screen. Now let's get back to the story. So back in 2011, 18-year-old Samantha Stites was entering the college world at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan. Samantha had grown up Christian, so she quickly joined a Christian group at a nearby church. She had no idea that that is where her stalker would first lay eyes on her, and that she wouldn't be out of his eyesight for over a decade to come. 11 years later, it was 2022, and Samantha believed she was going to die in the soundproof bunker made just for her. She had cuffs on her wrists. She was bound at her feet. She was gagged with a ball gag taped around her head. She was trapped in this box with supplies surrounding her, as though someone had planned to keep her here for a long period of time. 2022, she was a 30-year-old social worker who would be kidnapped at her own residence 3 months after filing a protection order against the person who would then kidnap her. It was October 7th of 2022 when Samantha would realize that someone was breaking into her home. She was asleep when she was startled awake by a creaking floorboard. But Samantha had been through quite a lot during this last decade, and due to this, she actually had a sharpened hatchet under her bed. But while she pulled this up to use, she was subdued by the weight on top of her. She was bound, she was blindfolded, she was placed into her own vehicle and driven away from her home. Even though she couldn't see, she began to count the turns that they were making, trying to remember everything that could lead the police back to this location she was being taken if she was ever able to contact them. The drive wasn't long, and soon enough she was taken out of the car and placed somewhere else. Now she was trapped in a box, face to face with the person who had been stalking her for over a decade and now had her in their grasp. This stalker began to tell Samantha that this bunker was built for her. It was soundproofed, it was stocked with food and water and a bucket for bathroom needs, as well as weapons such as a crossbow and rifles. She would be told she was going to be held for 2 weeks inside of this box she was in that was modeled after the TV show on Netflix called You, where a serial killer psychopath, Joe Goldberg, would stalk women before holding them in his cage, which was a lockable glass box used as a torture chamber for his victims before he killed them. Sam had seen this show and she was horrified. She knew exactly what he was referring to, but she was now living a part of this terrifying TV show in real life. However, this had been occurring for years and she had warned everybody that it was a matter of time till it escalated. Now, Sam was trapped with a man she had decades of reasons to fear. You see, Samantha had grown up in a very small town with her single mother. She was known to be someone who was friends with everyone. She had a very dark sense of humor that everyone loved. She was just a normal girl until she went to college. Nothing was ever the same after that. You see, back in 2011, when Samantha had just gotten to college, she was trying to meet friends. At the Christian group she attended, she had seen this very socially awkward guy. He was a bit of an outcast. His name was Christopher. She felt sorry for him, not talking to many people, but he was 7 years older than her. She recognized that he was alone most of the time. He had red hair, he had a nickname of Red, but he did say a few words to her. Now, Sam was kind, she was outgoing, and so of course she made everyone feel welcome and she spoke back to him. But he then started messaging her on Facebook after friending her. They realized they lived in that same apartment complex on the campus at college. And these messages from Christopher began to come in often. Christopher was asking to hang out, to go on dates, to meet up with him. And with every gentle rejection that Sam gave him, the more he seemed to push the issue. Sam had no idea what her initial kindness would result in. And it was not her fault that she had been just a kind person having small talk. She could have never predicted what was to come. But Christopher latched on to Samantha in a way only described as concerning in the beginning. These Facebook messages showed further signs of attachment. Christopher gave her a nickname, Jelly Bean, unprompted. She had no idea why. He then began to become emotional and passionate. When he was speaking to her, he was letting her know that she meant a lot to him. He began to use his religion and the fact that they were both Christians and Samantha's relationship with God to try to bring them closer. He was saying, God tells me that even if he separates us, he will use us for his glory and bring us together again if we are with him. He said another one saying, John 15:16, you did not choose me, but I chose you. About once a month, he would attempt to hang out with her. He would contact her via Facebook or text, and every single time she would let him down gently. But roses began to show up everywhere that Samantha went, and so did this man. Every time she looked over her shoulder, he was there following her. While attending one of the Christian group meetings, Christopher would let her know that in the past he had been known to see red and beat someone up. Samantha didn't know what to say to this, but it did tell her more about the man that would not leave her alone, that he was capable of violence. The stalking continued when Samantha spotted him at her internship, her job, around school. She then began to join an all-girls frisbee team. And while at practice, he was sitting on the stands all by himself watching. Her boundaries weren't just being tested. They were being completely ignored, and the behavior seemed to be escalating. The next year, in 2012, Samantha was horrified to realize that the stalking and harassment switched from just occurring on campus and around where she was to her hometown. You see, that summer, Christopher showed up at her work back in Elk Rapids, Michigan, to give her flowers. She was not there, but a coworker later gave them to her, telling her who had shown up to give them. She was trying to just put it off as a nice gesture, but it did make her uncomfortable. And then back to school that winter in December, the students were then out for winter break. Christopher would ask Sam for a ride to his hometown in Kingsley where his family lived. He didn't have a car. He knew that she was headed that way toward Elk Rapids, so being the kind human she was, she agreed to this. During this ride, Christopher was said to keep bringing up things that they had previously talked about, and Sam believed most people wouldn't have remembered some of the things that she said, but he did. But as she dropped him off, he gave her gas money and then pulled out a Christmas present just for her. Samantha was taken aback. She didn't really think that they were good enough friends to buy presents for each other, but Christopher said that he also wanted to do something together during the break. She didn't have any desire to, and so she basically just said she was going to spend the time with her friends and her family. She said that he was considering them as good friends when she just thought of him as an acquaintance. But by November of 2013, when Samantha's birthday came around, Christopher told her that he had a present for her. These were tickets to the Red Wings hockey game that they would be going to together. Samantha completely denied this at this point, letting him know she was not interested romantically. Again, he did not get the hint, and that winter, Sam stated that he would stop by her home multiple times uninvited to see her. So she started looking out her window before answering the door and just completely not answering the door anymore. But this really made her realize he was not reading the signals that she was putting out. But 3 years after meeting Christopher in 2014, when Samantha was about 21, she was in her last year of college. She had an internship at the North End Community Ministry and stated that Christopher followed her from her home to that internship and left a rose on her windshield on her car. She was afraid because she did not think anybody knew where this internship was, but now he did. Her roommate then found another rose in their driveway. The next day, there was another rose on her windshield, and the day after, a rose and a note on the stairs to her apartment. This note was about how God put Sam in Christopher's life and how he liked her. And although it wasn't signed, she knew that this was Christopher. She texted him to confirm this, and he admitted it. He thought it was romantic, but she told him it was inappropriate and that she wasn't interested. He said he didn't think that she would reciprocate it, but he thought that he would try. He then said he would settle for being friends and that she should just pray about it. On April 26th of 2014, as Samantha had graduated college, she had headed back to her hometown of Elk Rapids, Michigan. This was a tiny place, a one-stop town, 2.5 hours away from college. She was relieved to get away, specifically from Christopher. Christopher continued to try to message her to meet up. Sam was being very stern about her responses, letting him know she was not interested in being friends. She made it clear he was not invited to her hometown if the goal was to meet up with her. But when Samantha was once at her job at her hometown, she would hear the door open and see the man of her nightmares. Christopher was standing in front of her with flowers after she had told him she was no longer interested and to not come. But he seemed surprised that she was ungrateful for the flowers. He stated that he knew her grandfather had passed, and he wanted to give them to her. She left her job upset. He followed her to the bus stop, telling her he didn't understand. He wanted to talk to her. But she finally snapped, yelling at him on the street corner that she was not interested and to leave her alone. She said she didn't even have a desire to be friends with him. But the next day, she noticed that he had dyed his hair black. By that September, Samantha decided to take a year off before going to grad school to apply for a ministry internship in Kansas City, Missouri. This was at the International House of Prayer, and she was chosen to go. Sam and her friends, both from her hometown and at college, thought that Christopher was just a guy who could not get a hint and that he didn't know she wasn't interested, but her moving away would help everything. But they were soon going to learn that he was much more serious about his demands to be with Samantha. 2 days prior to leaving for her internship and moving to an entirely different state, she was in a friend's car when she noticed someone following them in a red motorcycle. Sam knew this was Christopher. She decided to confront him. Samantha was upset and asked him what he was doing there. Christopher was very calm and would tell Samantha that he not only applied for the same internship she was going to in Kansas City, but he had also been chosen. He said he thought she wasn't going to do it anymore, and all of his other options had fallen through, but he thought that this is where God wanted him to go. After finding out Samantha was in fact going, had the audacity to ask her if she would give him a ride there. This was the first time in 3 years that this strange behavior had Samantha scared. She was being stalked. Her friend told Samantha that someone was looking for her a few days later, coming out of her apartment. Samantha showed this friend a picture of Christopher and then confirmed that that was the man that they had seen. He knew where she lived, even though she had never posted this anywhere. Now, her friend's father was actually the one to bring up a restraining order, and while Samantha wanted to deal with it on her own, she knew something needed to be done at this point. So by September 18th of 2014, Samantha filed a restraining order against him at the Antrim County Circuit Court. She also called the internship and informed them of the stalking behavior. Judge Norman Hayes would look through the report and the incidents that Samantha had documented from over the years. He had 24 hours to review this and make a decision. Sam stated that Christopher often did not make sense and seemed to have major internal conflict going on. He confessed to her to having anger problems growing up and that he was arrested for assault, but she did not know the details. She said that even in Frisbee, he would play very aggressively, hurting the other people, committing unnecessary fouls, and making people angry. She stated that she had saved messages from him in case that they needed more evidence. But not only did this report involve Sam's experience with him, but also her friends who had witnessed this. Her friend back in college, Mackenzie, wrote that in 2013, she was leading Bible study that Sam was a part of. Christopher had previously been attending another Bible study, but started showing up to the same one when Sam did. When he walked in, Mackenzie said Samantha was so uncomfortable she decided to leave, and Christopher chased her all the way to the bus stop. The next week, he was there again with nothing to work on. He was just sitting there watching Sam. Mackenzie began to feel very uneasy when he was around, and so the co-leader of the group actually told him it was best if he did not return. He continued to come back anyways. Mackenzie said he was not respecting their boundaries and Sam had to stop going. Then a coworker of Sam's named Josh wrote a witness statement that back in 2012 they were working together at the Right Tree Adventure Rentals when a man came in and asked if Sam was around. When he was told she wasn't, he gave the coworker the flowers and asked him to give them to Sam. The coworker found it strange. This man looked to be older than Sam. He knew Sam wasn't dating anybody, but this coworker stated that a few days prior to Samantha filing this restraining order, he had run into that same man. It was the man at Sam's apartment back in her hometown. He stated that Christopher was at the top of the stairs at the apartment. He asked Josh if Sam was around, said he knocked multiple times, but Josh just told him he wasn't sure. Sam stated she had never given out her apartment address and that her friends would not have given this out either. She believed he was either watching her or did some major snooping. Now, Judge Haynes read this report and instantly knew that this man, identified as Christopher Thomas, was obsessed with the Samantha Stites. He said that he was going to do something severe, either rape, kill her, or kidnap her. He said if you look up Stalker, there was a picture of Christopher right there. So he immediately granted Sam a 6-year protection order, the longest he had ever granted. The Internal House of Prayer internship also decided he was not going to participate. She could move away. She could enter this internship alone. After this restraining order was granted, for the first time in years, Sam felt like she was not being followed. She went on to graduate school. She began studying as a therapist. She ended up getting a job as a social worker after graduating. But at this point in her life, her mom and her grandmother actually passed away back in Elk Rapids, Michigan. So she decided to go back home. She bought a house to renovate. She joined an adult soccer team. She started a blog called the Dry Bones Breathe. She had even connected with a stranger through her blog named Sarah, and they would often talk about religion together. She was living her life. She was free. But in 2020, this was 6 years later, that protection order was up. Samantha didn't even realize, but Christopher wasted no time. Sam had finally started to learn how to be less hypervigilant. But on September 20th of 2020, Sam was headed to her soccer game. A normal part of her schedule, something she loved to do, but she would have the rug pulled out from under her. The sense of security washed away within seconds, because standing in front of her was Christopher Thomas. She recognized him instantly, even though he did look a bit different, but he didn't say a word. When Sam got home, She rifled through all of her paperwork, finding this restraining order. That's when she saw that that date was the exact date the restraining order was up. While Sam tried not to spiral, her friends were disturbed. Christopher didn't look entirely the same. While Christopher 6 years ago was said to be a bit bigger, out of shape, he now looked extremely fit and healthy. Her friend said it looked like Christopher had been training for something. Christopher had also then joined her adult soccer league. He was constantly trying to get closer to Sam and slam into her while playing. And although Sam told the league about the past with this man, they were legally unable to kick him out. Everyone on the team could see his aggression, and it was getting worse. He began sticking his tongue out at Sam when he caught her eye, and it wasn't just at soccer. Sam then began to see him at her local grocery store, her gym, the bars around her, anytime she was there. And this continued for the next 2 years. One of her friends who spotted him on a night out confronted him after he had followed them home. Christopher told her he was not following Sam. He hadn't even said a word to her in 8 years. Sam was in denial that this was still happening. She did not want him to rule over her life anymore. She said she didn't feel like she had enough evidence for a restraining order. He hadn't actually contacted her in any way that could be proven. Anytime she showed up somewhere, he would walk in shortly after. All of her friends could attest to this, but there was no proof. But while talking this through, her friends began to theorize that Christopher had to have some sort of tracker on her. They searched her car but were unable to find anything. So pressure from her friends resulted in her sending in a petition for another restraining order. She wrote on July 6th of 2022, "I, Samantha Stites, feel I am in danger and request protection from Christopher Thomas, presumably of Traverse City. Christopher has a history of anger and violence and has a pattern of following me despite being asked to leave me alone. I have a prior PPO against Christopher that was valid from 2014 to 2022. Christopher would then walk into that same courthouse and ask if a PPO had been filed against him. They were unable to confirm or deny this, but he knew. Days later, the PPO was denied due to it appearing that Sam and Christopher had a complicated relationship. But if they had looked into Christopher's previous records, they would have found that not only did he have this prior PPO, he had also been arrested and convicted for harassment and stalking of another woman prior to Sam. This was a woman named Kelly who filed for a PPO against him back in 2009, 2 years prior to when the stalking of Sam began. She was working at a residential treatment center with Christopher at that time. He had emailed her asking her to dinner. They went out. He was asking her on a few more dates, but he then began following her and standing outside of her home. Even after she filed a PPO, Christopher would drive by watching Kelly. And finally, in October of 2010, Kelly pressed charges against him for stalking, and he got 10 months probation. And this is all the year prior to meeting Sam. So after stalking Kelly for 2 years and 11 years of stalking Samantha, on October 7th, 2022, Christopher did the very thing that Samantha feared and warned everyone he was going to do. At 7 a.m., he broke into her home to abduct her. She grabbed her hatchet. However, the weight and the strength of Christopher on top of her was overwhelming. He began to choke her with his hands, and she thought she was going to die right there looking at him. She had been screaming, but she could barely get this out as she was being strangled. Samantha would say that she then pretended to go unconscious at this point because it was the only thing that she could do. Christopher let her go, but she was bound, and then she told him if he was going to rape her, to just do it. Christopher informed her that he just wanted to talk. She told him she was listening, but he said not there. He then proceeded to place the ball gag in her mouth, duct tape it around her head, and carry her outside. She was praying for someone to see her being placed in her vehicle, and she knew that leaving that house made the likelihood of surviving decrease, but there was nothing she could do. Her eyes were covered with a bandana and they were on the move. Christopher got Samantha out of the car once they stopped, and while she couldn't see anything, she smelled lumber. When she was set down, she was finally allowed to see, and that is when she would see around her about a 7-by-7-foot room with soundproof patches as tiles all over the walls. Samantha realized she was inside of a horror movie. Christopher then took off her restraints and informed her that he had taken the next 2 weeks off of work and that she would be with him for that period of time. He started showing her the supplies that he had prepared for their time together. Christopher would then tell Sam that while this box was inspired by Netflix's You, it wasn't made out of glass like Joe Goldberg had made, because that wasn't logistically possible. He had looked into it. He had also planned a cover story for why she was missing. He was going to stage her death. He was going to place her paddleboard near Lake Michigan and allude to her drowning to death. Now, at this point, that Netflix show You had aired back in 2018, 2 years prior to Christopher's PPO expiring. So it posed the question, did this show reignite his desire to stalk her? What was his plan prior to seeing You? Did he have a plan for the moment that the PPO expired? Was he always going to abduct her and hold her? Or did this serial killer psychopath inspire him? Well, Christopher would then leave this tiny room bunker for around 2 hours that morning. Samantha began to pray while alone. She got angry, but she would later say that she knew her mind was the way out of this abduction. She needed to be on top of her game mentally. She would have to stay calm. She would need to rely on her training as a social worker. She was trained to conduct motivational interviews to basically work out what would drive a person to make change in their life. So she just needed to change Christopher's mind. Christopher began to talk to Samantha when he returned, but it was more of an interrogation. He was showing her a bunch of photos he had taken of her over the last few years, from afar, watching her. She was to answer questions about why she had been in different locations, who she was with, but he already knew the answer to all of those. Christopher informed her that he had placed trackers on her car, her neighbor's car, her friend's car, in order to follow her everywhere. He had tracked her movements over the last few years using a GPS device and an app on his phone. He showed her all of this, and hiding her fear, Samantha told him that he was clever for doing that. Christopher told her that 2 years prior, when he came back into her life, she looked at him like he was a monster. He said she did not give him a chance and he just wanted to clear the air and get closure. So instead of saying anything to her, Christopher had just started following her again. Christopher then gave Samantha a gift. This ended up being a Red Wings hockey jersey. This had her name on it. And Christopher informed her that it was a gift from back in 2013, 9 years earlier, when he had given her the tickets and she refused to go with him. He had kept it all that time. Samantha then decided that Christopher needed to believe that she wanted to be his friend. So she got him talking, and he began to confess that he wouldn't survive prison. He did not want to go to prison. That's when Samantha had her idea. She told Christopher that she was really good at keeping secrets due to being a social worker, and that if he let her go, she would not go to the police. But it needed to be soon that he let her go, before the police even found out that she was gone. Christopher didn't believe her, though, and he told her that the only way he would believe her is if she slept with him. Samantha tried to tell him she was seeing somebody else, that she didn't see him that way, and Christopher knew that. But Christopher got angry and left her alone in that bunker once again. 13 hours after being kidnapped, Samantha was emerging from a storage unit complex at nighttime. She got into a vehicle, a black Cadillac, and saw her very own paddleboard inside that car. That story that Christopher had told her about a cover-up was not just a threat, but she began to drive herself to her own vehicle, which was parked nearby, and she had made it out alive. When Sam spoke to the police, she told them what occurred in those 13 hours and how she escaped. When it came to the deal that she made with Christopher, Samantha said she felt like she had no choice for her survival. She gave Christopher what he wanted. She made him promise that if she slept with him, he would let her go. He shook her hand and told her that it might take a while because he would pleasure himself 12 times a day. Samantha began crying during the sexual assault, and he had asked her if she was okay. She said nothing. At the end, he said, "That's all I wanted for so long. You're the person I'm supposed to marry." But then miraculously, and due to the psychological tactics that Samantha used on her abductor, he let her out and pointed her in the direction of her own vehicle. But Samantha's part of the deal was that she would not go to the police. It was obviously a lie, but she knew that Christopher was still tracking her car at that point, and she was terrified of him. So she actually decided to drive straight home and called her friend to come and pick her up from a neighbor's driveway. She ended up taking her to the hospital to get a rape kit. Proof she would finally be able to take to the police and to court. Because unfortunately for this woman, this stalking for the past 2 years had not been believed. She had not been believed. 6 hours later, a detective would come into this hospital and immediately knew while looking at Sam that she was telling the truth. Sam remembered so many details. She told the police that Christopher was capable of murder and might even go after her friends and family to get to her after realizing that she had broken the deal. She also told the officers that he would not go to prison and he was wanting to make the police shoot him if it came to that. But Sam was able to recount the turns that he made from the drive to her home to the bunker, and due to this, it was discovered exactly where this bunker was. It turned out to be a rental storage unit in Blair Township, about 40 minutes from Elk Rapids. Now, a search warrant was filed to enter the unit, and inside the storage unit was a homemade bunker exactly as Sam described.
Police raided the storage unit.
This is the interior. There are 3 hooks in the wall.
Christopher was not inside, but it was a wooden box with sandbags surrounding it to soundproof it further. The insides were tiled with soundproof panels, and there were little hooks on the walls for chains. Investigators found that it was created the moment that Sam had filed for her PPO. That was ultimately denied. After Christopher had entered the courthouse asking if she had filed this, and he was not given an answer, he immediately went to the store to buy supplies. He had been seen on CCTV at Menards buying $5,000 on his own You-inspired cage. The surveillance footage also caught him at the storage unit and the morning that he kidnapped Sam, also at the storage unit. Christopher Thomas's cell phone records were then obtained, and investigators established a likely location to arrest him. As they drove around, they found a black Cadillac like Sam described and found him at a house on Grant Street in Traverse City. But there were other residents of this home, and so they waited until he actually came outside to his vehicle. And 36 hours later, Christopher Thomas was finally arrested after 11 years of stalking this woman.
Car.
Open the door slowly now.
They place him under arrest.
Inside Christopher's own home, investigators located handcuffs, a ball gag, receipts for GPS trackers, all connected to Samantha. The trackers on Samantha's car couldn't even be found by seasoned investigators. It took an hours-long full search of these vehicles to finally locate them. Investigators were able to get the tracking data from her car and the location tracking data from Christopher's app on his phone, and found that for those 2 years he was constantly following her, about 5 minutes behind her. Christopher was also signed into Samantha's Facebook account on his phone, and he also had an account on a blog website under the name of Sarah, the same name who had been religiously commenting on Samantha's blog for those 6 years that Christopher was unable to see her under the PPO. So he had not left her alone for those 6 years. He had still been watching her, just from afar. During interrogation, Christopher would tell the police that he was hunting that morning. Investigators believed that he was beginning to get angry at Sam for going to the police because they were telling him that they knew of his storage unit. He began to then say that this was all a part of consensual sexual role play. He said he took it further than she wanted to. He said, "I'm never seeing daylight again, and you're taking her story as the truth." But when his DNA was a match to the rape kit, he was then charged with kidnapping, torture, criminal sexual conduct first degree, home invasion first degree, and aggravated stalking. He pleaded not guilty. He continually stated it wasn't rape. Thankfully, bail was denied. Now, the other woman that Christopher Thomas had stalked, Kelly, would come forward after Samantha survived. Kelly stated that she always knew that there would be someone else. Investigators had called her after finding the reports that she had made against him after Samantha's kidnapping. And she said she almost felt guilty because it wasn't just her, and she was right for all of those years that somebody else was going to be stalked. But there was nothing she could have done. Jailhouse calls revealed that Christopher was talking to his mother often, and she was worried that he had done something bad, and he told her that everything that happened was loving, kind, and caring. But he also told her that nothing she would have done would have mattered because nothing would have stopped him from doing what he was going to do. That he had thought about Samantha every day for the last 12 years at this point. Judge Kevin Eisenhammer was then assigned to this case, the same judge who had denied Samantha's PPO 3 months prior to her kidnapping. But under a plea deal, even though Samantha did not believe that this was going to be full justice, Christopher did plead guilty to kidnapping, torture, and aggravated stalking. But in order for Christopher to take this plea deal, rape was taken off of the charges. This was in 2023, and the prosecution was worried that his story of role play would cause the jury to believe this was consensual. Sam said nobody can give consent under those circumstances. Samantha was frustrated at this, obviously, and she gave her emotional victim impact statement.
I don't want to address Christopher, as he has not honored my requests, nor shown he values my thoughts or feelings in over a decade. Instead, I want to address the court and those present today. On October 7th, 2022, Christopher entered my home while I was asleep, lurked outside my bedroom, then attacked me, strangling me in bed. I was fairly certain his plan was to rape and murder me. At that moment, my worst fears about a creepy man who lived in my apartment complex in college and became obsessed with me became very real. I feel I have done everything I can to keep him away from me and protect myself. I tried to remember my last interactions with loved ones as he bound my hands and feet, shoved a ball gag in my mouth, and taped my mouth shut. I wondered if my dog and I would die in the tiny, windowless, soundproof bunker where he took me, laid me on a mattress, and handcuffed me to the wall. I wondered if I would see daylight again. I shook and sobbed after he raped me. I wasn't sure he would stop. If I tried to push him away, would he hold me down again? If I told him how scared I was and how disgusted I was with him, or I screamed again, would he tape my mouth shut, knock me out? I spent 13 hours in this makeshift prison, weighing my options, on alert and in constant fear of bodily harm and death. Once I escaped, I endured a grueling 11 hours at the hospital. I was poked and prodded during the SANE exam, given precautionary STI medication. I lost 10% of my body weight the first week after being kidnapped from the STI medication, and how painful it was to open my mouth due to the trauma from the ball gag. I woke up sweating with a racing heart at 6 a.m. every Friday morning for 3 months, my body seeming to remember what happened on that Friday morning when he broke into my home. I became easily startled in public places and even in my own home, which made having visitors a double-edged sword. I felt too scared to be alone, but I'd jump at unexpected noises my visitors made. I had to seek short-term and long-term disability as my inability to sleep and focus impacted my ability to work more than part-time. To this date, surviving this horrific crime has cost me $4,500 on therapy and an estimated $40,000 of lost wages. To this day, I struggle to sleep at night. I check all my doors and windows to see they are locked. I lock my bedroom door and sleep with the light on. and a firearm at my bedside. I now have a great distrust for men in general, not wanting to be alone with a man outside of my circle of close friends or family. I have little interest in intimacy and sexual relationships, and sometimes have a strong urge to pull away from simple displays of affection from loved ones. In my eyes, there is no appropriate restitution for what Christopher took from me. No words or money can restore the time, energy, privacy, and dignity that he took from me. I feel I was very fortunate to have escaped his imprisonment. I ask that the court protect myself and other women from being stalked and raped by this sick and destructive man by considering the longest sentence permitted by law.
Christopher then gave a statement, and he said he wished he could take it all back. But in 2024, he was sentenced to a minimum of 40 years to 60 years. If he were to ever be released, he would get a GPS tracker for life, which is only fitting considering he was tracking her all day, every day, for 11 years. The judge finally acknowledged the severity of his actions and his likelihood to reoffend. Samantha said, "Justice is a funny thing. It doesn't necessarily come in the form of prison years. I can't ever go back to before I was kidnapped, and that's something I had to grieve. But knowing that I'm finally turning the page on this, and that I should feel safe with him off the street, and that I am protected, means a lot. I feel free." And it's heartbreaking to hear this, but so important to highlight, because she wasn't just okay because this man was arrested. She was struggling to heal. It didn't just end when she escaped. She lives with this pain and the strength she was forced to create. Due to this case, Michigan courts have now updated their eternal PPO checks to ensure that staff review prior PPOs when new petitions mention them after Samantha's was denied for that second time. 1 in 3 women will be stalked in their lifetime.
Yeah, I hope that this sheds some light on stalking and how prevalent it is. Like 1 in 3 women are stalked in their lifetime to some degree, certainly, and thankfully most not to the extent that I was. It can happen to anyone at any stage of life. You know, I was 30 when I was kidnapped by my stalker, so older than I had expected. I hope it changes some of the discussions about PPOs and protections as well. I think at the end of the day, anyone has the capacity to do something incredible to save their own life.
In her own words, "The only way I really wanted to tell my story, at least at this point, was to do it in a very true fashion that includes my voice and is focused on me as a survivor more than what the perpetrator did." Which is exactly what this channel and my Survivor series is about. And that's why I really, really was grateful to have found Samantha's story, and grateful for her for being willing to share it to help others. Samantha does have a GoFundMe to help cover her medical expenses, her legal counsel, and mental health support. I will have that link down below if you would like to donate. Do you believe there are more women out there who were stalked by Christopher and either don't know that he has since been arrested, fear for their lives still to this day, and don't want to speak out? Do you think he's ever killed before? Do you think his plan was to kill Samantha after those 2 weeks in the bunker? Or was he always going to let her go? Was he so caught up in this delusion that he truly believed he could get her to be his friend or his girlfriend and they could live happily ever after? Would that have been broken eventually? And at that point, would he have killed her? That is a thought I don't even want to think, because this woman, this brave, incredible woman, she got herself out of that situation. She escaped. And I think that we can all learn from this. But also, the justice system needs to learn a lot about protective orders and how important they really are. Because while we do see a lot of cases where protective orders are filed and then they're not actually listened to, this man here, he did not get anywhere near her for 6 years because of that piece of paper. I hope that that judge that denied it learned a very valuable lesson in this case. And I want to personally, on behalf of him, apologize to Samantha that he did not believe her. No woman should ever, or man should ever, have to feel Like, they are not being believed when they are the most frightened that they have ever been in their life. But thank you for listening. Do not forget to download Solitaire Grand Harvest with the link in my description or scanning the QR code on the screen for free. Don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay. Bye.